Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So a little bit of a hectic week for all of us in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. The release of Genesys has basically taken over a lot of the content all over YouTube, and it seems to be all that everyone is talking about. Of course, it has had its effect on the market as well, and we're going to talk about a few of the notable shifts that we've seen on the market as a result. But until we have some official Genesys events happening and we get a better idea of what decks and strategies are going to be considered top tier, expect to see a lot of smaller movements in the next couple of months. However, we still have some changes to talk about related to standard play, as we have Doom of Dimensions officially tournament legal this upcoming weekend, as well as people preparing for YCS Anaheim in just a couple of weeks. But yeah, if you guys are clicking on this video, you'll have noticed that I finally got all of my stuff updated. Tom helped me out a ton to redo a bunch of the layouts and stuff that I was wanting to cover in Market Watches, and I'm really hoping that this is going to add more value for those of you that are watching. And of course, the webcam isn't lagging anymore, so that's a giant plus. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about all of the changes down in the comments section below, and let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Dominus Impulse. So Impulse is, in my opinion, one of the craziest cards in the entire game. It's a hand trap that can negate the effects of cards that special summon a monster, but it can only be really used by dark, fire, and water-based strategies. Since its release, we've seen the card used by decks such as Malice and Mermail, and this has been a fairly expensive card ever since its release. However, the card actually got a reprint in this year's tins, which caused the price of the original Secret Rares from Rage of the Abyss to drop. The top graph shows the decline of the originals from $70 all the way down to around the $35 mark. At the same time, the tin reprint, which is shown on the lower graph, actually came out and was sitting at around the $30 mark as well. However, we've seen both printings climbing in price over the last couple of weeks. At the moment, we're seeing the originals up at around $50, while the tin reprints are extremely close behind at $45 per copy. Of course, there are a few reasons for this card's price to be trending upwards. Although Malice is almost unplayable at the competitive level right now, the pure Mitsurugi deck has emerged as a top tier contender after only losing King of the Feral Imps on the most recent ban list, and they are able to use Impulse extremely effectively. Beyond that, the card is still usable in more rogue decks such as Fire King and Orchist. They're probably not top tier, but they definitely can be solid tier 2 strategies. Now, moving forward, Impulse is a card I would be cautious about holding onto too many copies of. It did just receive a reprint, so it seems unlikely that it will get a reprint right away, but as we've seen from tins the last couple of years, the reprint set that drops at the end of the year will often give cards from the tins another reprint that destroys the card's value. However, if the card doesn't get reprinted, we can definitely expect it to maintain its rather high price tag, as I'm certain that it will continue to be one of the more popular hand traps in the game for any deck that is able to actually play it. That said, this is something that you should make sure that you own a set of if a strategy that you're wanting to play is able to make use of the card, but definitely consider offloading your extra copies while they're still up there in price. Up next, let's take a look at Sky Striker Ace Aelia. Now this is of course a Sky Striker monster. Historically though, I think people have actually looked at this as more of a generic Link 2 monster that can provide spot removal for light and dark decks. On summon, this card lets you target a card on the field and then destroy it, but if you have 3 or less spells in your graveyard, then this card gets destroyed as well. Recently, however, Aelia has actually gotten a lot of attention as players are becoming more and more interested in playing the Sky Striker deck. Aelia has just one printing as a short printed secret rare back in Battles of Legend Monstrous Revenge, a set that came out a couple of years ago in 2023, and with just the one printing, the card's price has actually proven to be quite volatile. This card was around $10 to $15 for the longest time, but with the hype that we've seen for Sky Strikers recently, it has actually jumped to around the $35 to $40 price range within the last couple of weeks. Of course, there are a couple of reasons for Sky Strikers to be getting some hype. The first is of course Camellia, a really powerful new Link monster for Sky Strikers. This card was a promo over in the OCG, but at the moment we don't know when exactly it is that this card is going to be brought over to the TCG. Naturally, however, players are wanting to grab the card early on for when it does drop, since Sky Strikers are a very beloved archetype by a lot of players. Even without the new support, however, in the TCG, Sky Strikers are getting some attention as a potential tier 2 strategy thanks to the Radiant Typhoon archetype that's coming in Doom of Dimensions. Radiant Typhoon Vision is a common that lets you draw 2 cards and then discard a Radiant Typhoon card or a quick play spell from your hand. Since Sky Strikers have access to cards like Widow Anchor, Shark Cannon, and Eagle Booster, it seems likely that you'll have something to discard, so Vision provides Sky Strikers with some additional draw power to try and hit its powerful spells. Of course, Aelia having been a short printed card for 2 years and not receiving any sort of reprint means it's definitely due for one, and with how much players like Sky Strikers, it seems inevitable that Aelia will receive a reprint close to whenever Camellia is eventually imported over. However, if you do want to play Sky Strikers, Aelia is a card that you should have access to. I don't really see Sky Strikers as a meta deck necessarily, but they definitely could be a solid tier 1.5 or tier 2 deck in the hands of the right player. That said, I think this is a card that's fine to hold on to a single copy of, but beyond that, you'll definitely want to try and move your extra copies before that reprint comes. On to the next one, we have Dosolfachord Coolia. So the Sulfachord deck is one that has really quietly been getting some attention here in the TCG. They're getting some really strong new support cards in Doom of Dimensions, and one of the main deck monsters is a level 5 that can be special summoned alongside Jokul, and so players are thinking of playing Sulfachord Canine this upcoming format. Coolia is an interesting card. While it's in the scale, your opponent can't activate cards when you pendulum summon a Sulfachord monster, and then as a monster, it has an ignition effect to negate an opponent's card effect, and a trigger effect where you can destroy an opponent's monster. Honestly, Coolia isn't a particularly amazing card, but the Sulfachords in general are pretty forgettable, and a lot of the time you're just playing with mostly the new cards. However, Coolia is one of the cards that was an ultra back in Ancient Guardians. I don't think any of the cards from the archetype have been reprinted yet, so Coolia is naturally one that was targeted for a buyout. Historically, this card has only been worth a few dollars. It got some hype back a few months ago when the support was first revealed, but it had quickly settled back down to around the $7 mark. However, as you guys can see from the graph here, the card has shot up in the past month, and it's now actually sitting at around $20 for a single ultra rare copy. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any Sulfachord Canine deck lists that have been successful. I'm sure they exist, but even over in the OCG, I don't think they really play it all that much. The list I'm showing you here is a Melodious Sulfachord deck that apparently topped in the OCG, and it plays Coolia as a one-of, but with Max C and Electromite in the game, I think that this strategy is way too different to how the deck will work here in the TCG, so we're gonna have to wait over the next couple of weekends to see if someone is actually able to see maybe some regional success with the deck. But yeah, with this one, I do think that the Sulfachord cards are very likely to be reprinted. Not only are they getting support, but Konami has never reprinted them, so it seems that Konami will have to give them a reprint at some point, even if it is just to slide a couple of the more expensive cards into something like a Maze of Memories sort of set. Meta-wise, I was gonna have these as being low. Some of my friends told me that this was like a really real strategy, so maybe it's something that will see a little bit of play. But yeah, this is not something that I would be buying at $20 for. That's way too high of a price point in my opinion. If you are interested in playing this deck, then yeah, keep a copy or two for yourself, but only because you probably just bought these when they were dirt cheap and you didn't invest much into them, or maybe you can grab them off of a friend. But if you aren't interested in playing the deck, this is the sort of one that you'll definitely want to offload as soon as possible. So here's a fun one. We next have Zoodiac Ram. The Zoodiac theme is one that people used to really dislike. They were able to pull off some really annoying combos back when they first came out in Raging Tempest. Now, however, it seems that Zoodiac cards are sort of like a hipster pick. They saw a bit of success with Tri-Brigade a little while ago when they were basically a Zeus turbo deck, but that resulted in Trident getting banned once again. Now, however, Zoodiac is starting to see play because of the unbanning of Trident and Barrage going to 3 on the most recent ban list. Players are looking at using Zoodiac cards as a small engine to help get level 4 bodies onto the field in decks like Ryziel. Now obviously, Trident is the theme's sort of boss monster, having a quick effect to pop a card and being really easy to bring out of the extra deck, but Barrage being at 3 means that the engine is something that you can actually be able to access somewhat consistently. As far as Zoodiac monsters go, Ram is a pretty good one to run, since if it's attached to your Zoodiac Xyz as a material, that monster can't be targeted by trap cards like Infinite Impermanence, and then if this card is destroyed with the effect of something like Barrage, then you can special summon any Zoodiac monster from your graveyard, including one of your Xyz, so that you can then make a link play. Now, Ram has a couple of printings, but most of them are actually commons. Its one foil printing is as a super rare from OTS Tournament Pack 5, and that recently saw a pretty big spike in price. Ram has actually always been $1 or so. The Zoodiac archetype is something that players have wanted to see come back for a little while, and of course, there are some people that are hopeful or wanted to play Zoodiac in Time Wizard formats that needed this card for their cores, so it was never like a bulk super by any means. However, with the unbanning of Trident and the unlimiting of Barrage, we actually just saw super Rams go up to around $5 to $6 for a single copy, despite being just typically a one of in the Zoodiac engine if you are choosing to play it. Now that said, I don't expect too much out of Ram. It has its common printings, so the card is easy enough to find. With that, it doesn't really need a reprint unless they were to get some new support sometime soon. However, as currently constructed, even just as an engine, I don't expect the Zoodiac cards to see very much play. They just don't really do enough, and they take up too much extra deck space to really be that viable in today's game. If you do have these, I think it's fair to keep a set of the supers maybe alongside the rest of your core if you've had it for a long time, but if you don't have any particular attachment to the card, you're probably better off just selling them and playing with the commons than buying back the supers once the prices dip back down. Up next, we have Invoked Caliga. So Caliga, I feel like, is a card that kind of got disrespected when Invoked was really a thing. Everyone really only cared about Mechaba, Ragin, and then sometimes Purgatrio, but Caliga was actually the most degenerate one out of them all. Basically, this card is a giant floodgate, where if a player activates a monster effect, they can't activate monster effects for the rest of the turn. So they get one effect per turn, and they can also only attack once per turn. So basically, your opponent has to have an out to this card, or else they can't really play the game with monsters. Now, recently, this card has been getting some attention because of the Draco Tail strategy. We're seeing some lists choosing to run a single copy of Crowley, the one that we just got in Monster Mayhem, since you can search it out with Artemis the Link 1, then special summon it and use it to make Caliga because its effect makes it so that its name is treated as Alistair the Invoker. This is a sample build here, and it's actually very similar to a lot of the lists that we've seen topping regionals over the last couple of weeks. Of course, we should be getting Spenta here in the TCG eventually, though right now it is an OCG exclusive. Even over there, Caliga is something that a lot of Magistus Draco Tail lists are playing, not in every single build, but it's definitely something that comes up quite a bit. Now, Caliga has two printings here in the TCG. This card was first a secret rare back in Fusion Enforcers. That's the original printing, but it then got an ultra rare reprint in Battles of Legend Armageddon. Now, those reprints were quite easy to pull, so you can still grab them for only 25 cents or so, but of course players want the highest rarity version of the card, and so we've seen the original secret rares shoot up in price over the last month or so, despite the card not even being short printed. The card was a couple of dollars before, but as you guys can see here, the card has now settled at around the $8 to $9 mark after climbing steadily over the course of the last month. Now, fortunately, Caliga is accessible, so a reprint wouldn't be needed. If anything, I could potentially see Caliga getting banned if it ends up becoming too degenerate of a card. At the same time though, if we were to get a rarity collection type set again, Caliga is something that I could definitely see being thrown into the nostalgia pool so that it could get some nicer high rarity versions available to the player base. Now, in terms of meta relevance, it seems like it's a 50-50, right? It's not clearly in every single Draco Tail build, but it's definitely in enough of them that if you are interested in playing the deck, you should have one available as a tech option. That said, I think between a reprint possibility and the possibility of it getting hit on a future ban list, I'd probably look to sell off the secret rares while they are still worth money and just play with the much more affordable ultra rares instead. And finally, the last card I'm looking at for today is one I don't think I've ever looked at on Market Watch before. It is Pot of Greed. Specifically, we're here looking at the Starlight Rare version from this year's tins. Now, of course, the release of Genesys has flipped everything upside down. Players are looking at using all of these crazy cards again, but in a fun setting where you're not getting FTK'd the way that you would in a traditional format setting. Believe it or not, Pot of Greed is actually a perfectly reasonable card to play in Genesys. It's a +1, which is obviously great, but now it has a cost associated with it. You now have opportunity cost because playing Pot of Greed takes up 30 points per copy. So that means you aren't playing as many of the other cards that you could have used, so maybe you're missing out on Max C or Ash Blossom or K9 Azuna. However, of course, the fact that we can now play Pot of Greed is super cool. Now, before with the tins, everyone thought that Starlight Pot of Greed was cool, but I remember pulling it and just thinking like, what am I gonna do with Pot of Greed? Like, it's gonna sit in a binder and it'll be cool to look at, but that's really about it. Of course, Genesys basically just explains why the card was reprinted in the first place, and the player base is wanting to eat them up. The Starlight Rare Pot of Greed used to be quite cheap at only $3 to $4 per copy. However, basically right when the format was announced, people jumped on Starlight Rare Pot of Greed and it shot right up to the $10 mark and basically has stayed there for the past few days. Now, the graph on TCG Player hasn't updated, so I'm not showing it here, but what I am showing you guys is the sold listings, because this isn't a case of people just pulling listings and not really having any sales. There's a lot of people out there that are actively buying up sets of Pot of Greed for themselves to have access to, just in case they want to play it in their Genesys deck. Of course, you can play the card in whatever rarity you want to, whether that's the ultimate rare from Duelist Pat Kaiba or the original LOB printing. Maybe you even just have like a common that you've had from an old structure deck for the longest time. But either way, if you're going to play Genesys format, this is a card that you definitely want to have access to. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. I'm still not sure about what Genesys deck it is that I want to play. I really wanted to play Dark Worlds, but for some reason, like, Snow and Dark World dealings are both worth a lot of points. I guess because Snow and Silva you can use in like a hand loop deck, and then Dark World dealings is like an Exodia deep draw card, and it kind of sucks because I can't play my favorite deck of all time. But hopefully I'll be able to find something a little bit different. Also, make sure that you guys please give me your feedback and let me know what you guys think about the new layout, if there's any changes that you guys think I should be making, or just what you guys think about it in general. I really appreciate whatever feedback you guys have for me as well. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.